there's just a lot of misinformation and a lot of misconceptions surrounding animals, and not really a lot of decent places to get educational resources from. So I thought to myself, oh, I'd love to start a podcast. And everyone said how easy I am to talk to and how much they like talking to me. So I was on my friend's podcast as a guest, and I went, I really like this. This is really fun. I really enjoy talking to people that love animals and want to help speak for them. And I thought, why not? Why don't I just start? If it fails, it fails. If it succeeds, it succeeds. You know, it can only go two ways. And yeah, it's been just over a month now. And this is episode 18, I believe.
You put in some work.
A lot of work. Yeah, a lot of work, but it's been great so far. I do want to just visit everybody right now, but funding, it's a bit difficult.
I mean, funding, even for somebody in the States to get to everyone I want to go to is it's tough, you know, right? Like, I feel like every other month is like a reptile show that I would kill to go to, but it's out of state. And it's there's Chicago, there's Daytona, there's ones the Northeast in California, but you have to really pick and choose what you do. And I'm sure that trying to come over here and see everyone that you want to see that's going to be a trip for sure.
There's so many people in so many states, but I've just said, if anyone will have me on their couch, or I'll sleep on the floor. If it saves money, I'm happy to sleep on the floor. So
you've got a Florida place for sure. I'm sure there are multiple all up and down the state, but Miami, you definitely have a spot. So,
oh, thank you. I've got Tommy and Terrence. There's so many people I can't even think off the top of my head. As people will have me on their floor, I'm happy to to just chill and do whatever, stay out the way if I need to. I think I'll be out catching stuff most of the time anyway. Be in awe of Florida and all of its glory.
It's definitely a special and weird place.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I can't even comprehend it, to be honest. I was in the work. I'm sure I told you I was in the woods last week, and I was flipping stuff and I was looking under logs and rocks, and there was just nothing. There was just mushrooms.
So where do you how far do you have to go out to even get to that point, like from where you are?
That's quite a local place. So I was walking someone's dogs. Probably from my house, maybe like a 15-minute walk. It's just on the other side of town, really.
Very cool. Very cool.
I love the woods.
I need to go like herping more. That's one of the things I never actually have really done, but it's something that it's very high on my list to do. Hopefully like this winter when it's not quite so buggy or hot out. It's pretty hot here, and it's just been raining nonstop.
Like England. It's not hot, but it rains.
Yeah, no, I'm ready for some cooler weather for sure.
Yeah, well, it's nicer than probably anything we've had all year.
It might be, and I'm very lucky, and I'm definitely very spoiled with the climate for sure.
And it's great for tortoises as well. So
there's really there's no better place, I don't think, to have these animals, and I don't think that I would have gotten started down this path if I didn't live here. Just based on my journey and how I got into animals, Florida was definitely part of the catalyst for getting this going. It makes it a lot easier. Like, it lowers the barrier of entry a lot.
Yeah, everything thrives. Everything thrives there. That's the thing. That's how.
Yeah, so either things like can't handle it, right? So there are certain species of tortoise that like can't handle high humidity. So like those are just sort of off the table. But then I'd say the lion's share of the reptiles they just thrive. They do so great here. It's actually really tough because until April of 2023, so like 18 months ago, I only had outside animals. Like, I didn't have anything inside. And that was a big learning experience, bringing animals in. Never dealt with UVB before, never dealt with heating before. So that was a huge change. So that was really like the step 2 of my journey, moving from just the outside stuff to some of the smaller species I started keeping, which has been amazing. Like, I've met some very cool people doing it, and I love these animals.
Everyone has to start somewhere, and that's another thing that I say in the podcast as well. I'm pretty new to the game. I've only been doing it like 4 or 5 years, and I didn't start off that great or have a decent amount of resources or places to look or people to ask. So that was another thing that made me think I'd like to do that, because if the guests are happy with it, I can say, feel free to DM me or DM the guest if they're open to helping people, because most people are, and it's just about helping and educating, and just making sure that it's, there's no judgment, or, as I said, everyone's got to start somewhere and nobody knows everything. And it is a lot to take in at first as well. There's a lot to learn, loads of steps to do and things to consider that.
No, for sure. And like, I don't think, and I know you've had Dillon on this podcast, and like there's to me, like, Dillon is one of those people who I've learned so much from. He doesn't know it, obviously, but a lot of his episodes are like the basis for my understanding of different species. Like, and
his
so
content,
it takes people like that. And the other thing that he said, sorry, is where I was going with this, is husbandry is like a spectrum, right? And then there's like the zoo side of it, and then there's like the entry side. And what you have to do is you always have to be working to get better. Like, you're never going to start out with the vision that you have, probably. It's almost impossible to do it unless you have like unlimited resources, unlimited time, and just nothing else going on, and like no space constraints. But it's something you have to work towards every day.
For sure. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. A lot of work.
Dillon's one of those people, and his podcast, the Animals at Home podcast, is one that I aspire to be in the ranks of, like in the leagues. He's very inspirational and just a lovely guy as well. It was an absolute honor to have him as one of my first podcast guests, and I will have him back. I have been chatting to him. I need to sort a date out with him to have him back, but he covers so many different things, and whether it's enrichment or lighting or general care guides or behavioral guides. I think because he's got a couple of years behind him in the podcasting and the recording side of things, that he's built up a really decent catalogue of information and educational resources for people to go to, which is great. Highly recommend.
You can't go wrong with Dillon's information or content. It's evergreen, as long as like some of the guidance doesn't change. It's like a great starting place for anybody who's getting into I don't like calling it a hobby. Like, I really hate calling it a hobby. But anybody looking to get into this world, that's a great place to start.
I should be plugging my own podcast.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But but just to get the mentality, and that's what you're doing. Like, you're creating another place which is a little bit, so far from what I've seen, a little bit different than what he's done. And it's cool, because I didn't have, frankly, when I started getting back on social, what I wanted to do is, when I started working with Spengler, right? Anthony didn't have a podcast. He had a book, but like, I didn't know what to do. I was guessing and checking. I was working with, comparing Instagram shorts to little small, articles. But like, there are people now who are doing things like what you were saying and what you're doing, that's giving people like the knowledge and the information they need for species that are less frequently worked with, but are fantastic.
There's so many elements. So there's people that I'll reach out to, or that will reach out to me and go, hey, what's the podcast about? And I'll usually say to them, can I just do a voice message? Because it's much easier to explain. We've got the educational side of things, the animal advocacy, the responsible keeping of animals, the misunderstood species, the insects, and there's so many different areas to cover. And it's so much fun meeting people, and I'm learning so much. Like, with my friend Nick Davis, I learned so much about seahorses. So he's a marine biologist, and I don't know much. It's really cool. He's a marine biologist, and I don't know much about that side of things. So the podcast isn't I know everything about everything, because I don't. It's a learning journey for me as well. I'm on that journey with the listeners in some aspects. I am fascinated by everything in the sea and all of that all of those amazing creatures that there's always fish and animals to learn about, and then sharks. Everyone loves sharks. If you don't like sharks, you're a liar.
You're absolutely right. Objectively awesome.
They're just one of those. There's one for everyone. They just span such a variety of different kinds of sharks. It's just, anyway, we won't get on a tangent about sharks. That's the thing. I'm always very open and honest with my guests, with my listeners. If there's any questions, I'm always happy to constructive criticism, as long as it comes from a good place. I'm happy. I'm not going to get upset with people. I'm still learning things, and that's quite fun. Like, I wouldn't consider myself an expert in a lot of fields, but taking the journey with the listeners in some topics is quite fun. We're walking through this together.
I always felt like, the best businesses, the best things are started out of a need, right? And you're on your own journey, right? Looking for this information, and people get to go along with you. Like, you're asking the questions you're curious about. So that's awesome. That's the best way to do anything.
I want to be a friend on the screen and in your ears, That's a very strange strange way to word that.
It's true. That's what it is. That's what a podcaster is. 100%. You feel like you get to know podcasters.
Entertaining. It's all new for me, and having to do everything by myself, run 2 social media accounts, post daily, and have relevant, entertaining content, making it.
People don't think that takes a lot of time, but like it very much does. Even just regularly posting on Instagram.
Post reels and pictures. Try and hit that algorithm.
The algorithm is a tough thing, but I can't even imagine throwing in the podcast and the editing, and then plus you have your animals to take care of too.
Yeah, and myself and my life.
Right, I forget about us sometimes, right?
Yeah, always. That's the thing. If you having a passion for animals, you just forget, you neglect yourself sometimes. Something, as I said, I'm still learning. I need to dedicate a day, or at least start with an afternoon or an hour or something, that I just sit down and do something. The side of it where I'm contacting people, trying to make dates with people, navigating different time zones, especially Australia.
Australia's a tough one.
Damien Duffy and Mick Fullerton are 2 of the people that I'm really, really looking forward to having. They're just very busy people. I don't expect people to drop everything and take an hour or 2 out of their day and their busy schedule just to sit and talk with me. As great as that would be, it's not really realistic. There's people that have said, I don't have a lot of followers, do you still want me on the podcast? And yeah, of course I want you. If it's relevant, if it works, absolutely 100%. Anyone can message me. You don't have to have a huge following. As long as the relevance is there, that's all that matters to me. And have a good time, of course. Anyone that's neurodivergent as well, making sure that I am aware of it and I will put things in place. So I have anxiety or am neurodivergent. So I always say with guests, if you need to take a break and just scroll your phone for a couple of minutes, or you need to go and walk around, then just interrupt me and do your thing. The most important thing, aside from education and all the other aims of the podcast content wise, is to make sure that my guests are happy and they feel comfortable and not overwhelmed or overstimulated or anxious. It's, as a neurodivergent person myself, I completely understand what that's like, and I want to make everyone comfortable and happy.
For sure. And like, that's sort of funny. Like, I didn't know where you fell on like wanting to touch on these sort of things. One of the things I really value, first of all, that's great that you take those accommodations and like are very much into keeping your guests safe. But like, I think one of the things that I found surprising, or maybe not even surprising, or I wasn't expecting it at first, but I think a lot of people in this community, they are neurodivergent. They have mental health problems. They have
100%.
Addiction problems. Like I fall under those categories myself. This has been like my safe haven that I am sober, and this was my healthy hobby, right? So it actually started.
How long have you been sober?
So I have like kind of a weird story with it.
I don't want you to feel any pressure.
No, none at all. I've been clean off pills for almost 14 years.
Wow. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah. And, I was in rehab. My doctor told me not to go back to school. I did. So when I told the governing like body over attorneys in Florida, is the Florida bar, I disclosed that to the Florida bar, but my doctor wrote and said that I left against his advice to go back to school. So after I passed the Florida bar, I had a job and they were cool with me being there, but I wasn't technically a licensed attorney. So I had for 2 years to fight the Florida bar after I passed the bar to get my license. So during that time is when I kind of fell into plants, which is when I started my Instagram page. I created a plant business when I got sober of alcohol. Thanks. Yeah. So when I got sober of alcohol 7.5 years ago, that's when I dove into this. And it's just been like definitely like my saving grace, my passion, my happy place. I know a lot of people here who have PTSD and things like that. So it's a pretty cool community. It's like a different group of the AA team, right? Like the Reptile AA group or something. But I really enjoy it. It's fun. It's fun, and I've met a lot of people who have been through a lot of the same things, who also have the same interests.
Yeah, it's definitely something that it can easily spiral. So my sort of addiction became rescuing animals and helping animals right at the beginning, and not necessarily giving them the right enrichment and enclosures and etc. But I've 100% learned from it. I regret it, but I've got to try and move forward and just help anybody else that's in the same boat, and help whenever I can, because I'm not here just for education. I'm here for anybody that needs to talk about anything. I've met a lot of different types of people, had a lot of my own issues. I know when people say they don't judge, they don't always mean it, but I really don't. You could say anything, and I'm obviously going to keep it to myself. It's confidential. And I don't judge people. I think I have a lot of love, and I just have a very open mind, and I could probably relate to it anyway. I've been through a lot in my 29 years of life, and honestly it just feels like it's really starting now. I've got to this place where I feel like, okay, I know where I'm heading down. I know what my goals are. I know what I want to achieve, and it's a really awesome place to be in.
Yeah, I think 29 is about when I sort of figured out where I wanted to like truly go, and was hoping and thought I would as well. So that was a good time for me. And that was right around the reptile time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just they were part of things that fell into place for me. But yeah, no judgment. I know that's always like an asterisk thing. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to judge you. It's like, unless you talk about this one thing.
Unless you say you don't like frogs, then I might.
No, I did my research. I know not to say that, but no, I do like frogs. They're very cool. I don't have any. I've been flirting with the idea of getting some.
Do it.
I'm wary of introducing new new genres into the mix, if that makes sense.
If you don't feel comfortable, then yeah, don't do it. Don't feel pressure. It's something that you can just be interested in and research until you sit there and go, yeah, I feel comfortable. I feel like I can do this financially. I know enough about them and I can care for them. Those are the main kinds of things.
Until, say, I think it was March, I never had anything. I had a boa constrictor at one point, and I thought I was going to love it, and I did. So I've sort of learned like what I'm really truly interested in, and so I didn't buy another animal other than like a tortoise or turtle until March, and they were geckos. And so geckos have been like the thing I've sort of started on recently, and I'm trying to get really good at that right now. After that, I can definitely see frogs being the next move.
I'm happy to help with anything. If I don't know the answer, then I will know someone who does.
Yeah, I will take you up on that 100%. Do you have a favorite? What would you recommend starting with once that time comes?
A lot of people go for the White's tree frogs. They have a lot of character. They're quite entertaining. It depends what you want, really. If you want a potato with a mouth covered in dirt that doesn't really move, then Pac-Man frog for sure. Yeah. They will just bury and not really do anything. If you want something that's more interactive and has a bit more personality, then the White's tree frogs are great. I love the red-eyed tree frogs. Dart frogs, very popular. Dart frogs.
Yeah, like when I do it, and I know that like cohabbing is like what it is, right? I would love to eventually like.
It depends on the species, yeah.
I would love to eventually like have a species with like neon day geckos. I don't know if that's something that would ever be doable, but it's something that makes me nervous and something for later for me. For sure.
When we get into talking about the species that you have, I'm looking forward to that. Anthony Pierlioni, he's a ray of sunshine personified in human form. My good friend Mandy, a Shedding Chance reptile rescue, was at I believe it was a conference yesterday with him. I said, as two of my favorite people on the entire planet, and you didn't get a selfie together. How could they? Forget to get a selfie?
Well, next time they owe you one for sure.
They do. Yeah, I think they were just busy and talking. And so Mandy's really small and Anthony's really big and really tall. So the height difference would probably be kind of hilarious. She won't mind me saying that. She's like one of my besties. I love her.
I didn't realize he was 6'8".
Yeah, he's ginormous.
I think we're all super interested in the other's interests, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just vibing and talking about our love for mutual things. It really puts me in a good mood, and it makes you appreciate everything and kind of gives you a reason to keep going.
Ready.
I got it just in time.
No, never heard it.
Never. I managed to like choke on air yesterday. I don't know. It just went down the wrong pipe or something. And then I was like, hang on, I can't breathe.
I do that weekly, at least.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Reptile Rendezvous. I'm your host, Alex and all her animals, and today we've got a fantastic episode lined up for you. If you're tuning in for the first time, thank you for joining us, and for our loyal listeners, it's great to have you back. We have a special guest with us today, Justin, a passionate tortoise keeper who's been working with these amazing creatures for a couple of years now. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
It's a pleasure. Again, it's always a bit strange when we get into recording and we kind of just like, hey, how's it going? Even though we've been chatting for a while.
Yeah, but it's always fun.
Can you tell the listeners a bit about yourself and how you got into tortoise keeping?
Definitely. So when I did get into tortoises, it was kind of a weirder time in my life, but I did have an online nursery, and I specialized in rare and variegated plants that I imported primarily from Indonesia and South Korea. So obviously variegated patterns have different, there are different patterns, different colors. And at one point, I have to admit it wasn't for the right reasons, but I noticed the Burmese star tortoise because of the shell patterns, and I was just enamored from that point. So plants were my hobby; they became the job. The tortoises became the hobby. I ordered my first tortoise as like a gift, Christmas gift to myself on Christmas Eve of 2018, and I got my first tortoise, which was a Burmese star, who is named Dr. Brett.
Beautiful.
And he started it all. As soon as I got him, I was just blown away by how personable and interactive he was. Now I know it's a he. Back then I didn't, but I just knew it was a species I needed to work with. I wanted to, create more of them. They're critically endangered, and they would be great for so many people. Like it's a great animal to enrich the lives of their keepers.
Yeah, they are great. They're so beautiful as well. Like I've seen a couple in person before, and they're one of those animals that when you see in pictures, you can't quite comprehend. It's just not on the same level as seeing one in real life. I think the shape of the shells as well is something that people don't expect.
Yeah, I mean the patterns, the colors, I mean they can look fake, but then when you take it back like another layer, I mean their personalities are incredible. And I think Burmese star was like the perfect tortoise for me to start with because I have worked with a large number of species, and to this day, I still think that they are probably up there with the most personable species. And I'm so glad I kind of had that as my intro to tortoises, and then I got into other species. But Burmese star has since the beginning been like the main focus of my collection obsession in this world, for sure.
Yeah, you do have a lot of really, really cool species that I'm really, really jealous of. I guess, do you have a favorite tortoise species? I guess it's the Burmese star, or?
It's the Burmese, and then I don't know if it's tied or like a close second, but the Egyptian tortoise is such an incredible animal. It doesn't have the shell like a radiated or a Burmese star does, but they're my office buddies. I have them in my office. They are so personable. They don't know how small they are, which is fun for the keeper. They walk right up to me. They are almost as interactive as like the Sulcata we were talking about offline. So it's definitely the Burmese and the Egyptian tortoise.
If someone wanted to keep a tortoise as a pet, what essential tips would you give them?
So if I had the option to talk to somebody, right, and they asked me this question directly, my first response would be, where do you live? Are you keeping it indoor or outdoors? Like that's the big divider, right? If I'm getting that question and I don't have the opportunity to talk to somebody, I think that a Western Hermann's, that's a great pet. It's also an awesome tortoise species. It's a perfect size. It can do well indoors or outdoors. I also think that pancake tortoises are great for that. Also great indoors, or really those are better indoors. Unfortunately, keeping them outdoors, it's a little more dangerous with that species, but I think a Hermann's you can't go wrong with. That's where I would say. And then if you have the room and you can do outside, I think a Burmese star is great. Cherry heads are a great species depending on where you are.
They are.
I don't work with them anymore, but they're wonderful. I would stay away from the Sulcata, but they are wonderful animals. Definitely not great pets. Wonderful animals.
What animals do you currently have?
Tortoises are my main focus, and then geckos have recently become another passion of mine. So in terms of tortoises, the Burmese star, I have a 3.2 group. I just hatched my first hatchlings the last couple of months, that was the coolest moment of my life. Seriously, I have radiated tortoises. It was the best.
Yeah,
I have
childbirth.
I have Western Hermann's. I have one Sulcata. I have Greeks. And then indoors, I have Egyptians and pancake tortoises. And then geckos, I have Ebanawi, so like the spear point leaf-tail geckos, Palilo false geckos, which are very cool yellow from the Philippines, scorpion tails, neon day geckos, electric day geckos, and getting Europlatus Henkel's leaf-tail gecko. So that's what's going to be going in this big 36 by 18 by 36 tomorrow. Can't wait for those. And then obviously I have my black-breasted leaf turtle. Hey, you. I'm going to put her in her water
Don't
for a
take
little
her
bit.
out. I don't want to stress her out.
She sends her best. She did tell me that while I was over
Thank
there.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute dream species.
If I could recommend a species, or if I could tell anybody like with little space who had the upfront money to pay for one, that's like the turtle to get. It's one of the smallest turtles in the world, hilarious, very interactive, doesn't cost a lot to feed, doesn't have crazy heat or light requirements. Like, it's an amazing animal. It really and truly is. So the fact that you have Anthony as a friend is the guy who wrote the book on it. So
him and I, when we are talking, it's just tangent after tangent. I can feel my eyes starting to not want to eyes.
Ultimately, I do have a lot of animals, right? So there's close to 65 animals here. It's not something that I would ever, like, don't do what I do. I feel the need to say that, right? I have very specifically crafted my life around the ability to have animals. And, you know, I work remotely from home. I wake up the first hour or two in the morning, like, it's chores. At the end of the day, I do chores with them. I don't have kids yet.
Joys.
Part of the reason I did this at this stage in my life is that I had the bandwidth and the time to get this stuff up and running right now. The hardest part about this is, so far in my experience, getting it running smoothly and getting a really good routine down. I wanted to get this stuff set up for the next 20, 30 years of my life in a good, like, well-oiled way, as close as, or as well-oiled as it can be, given that we're working with animals. It's something I've always wanted, just to work with animals, and never wanted it to be my main job.
Yeah.
Just, it's my passion. I look around the yard and then, like, yep, counting through the enclosures, yep, those are the species in their spaces, yeah. And I think the species that I'm most excited about starting to work with are the Henkel's leaf-tailed gecko. I have a pied showing up tomorrow. With my history in plants, I've really gotten into the arboreal geckos. It's kind of like a slice of nature. Just, you can't put a tortoise in a 12 by 12 by 18. You could have a neon day gecko or something like that in there with beautiful plants and give it a great life, or 18 by 20. You know what I'm saying? It's a great pet for a lot of people if you're okay with not interacting with them physically. And I think that that's something that a lot of people like. I certainly love it. So getting to blend the plants with the animals is just such a joy. These videos and podcasts are as important as a resource as like any current publication, in my opinion, that is out there. Like, I absolutely use different podcasts and like time markers if I'm like looking to order something and I'm like, does it need a 5 or a 10? Yeah, does it need a 5 or a 10? Does this guy recommend who's the authority on this, you know? So yeah, I think it's great for the listener for a lot of reasons.
Should we talk about keeping reptiles outside? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so keeping animals outside it's like amazing. It's a blessing and a curse. Obviously, for a lot of species, I couldn't live in a better environment other than like their natural range to keep them, living in Miami. So when you keep animals outside, a lot of things are sort of handled for you, right? Like, you don't need UVB. You need to like create a space. You need to create a space where there's like full sun, but you're not dealing with the heat lamp. Substrate, you may or may not be dealing with that depending on where you live. But it's super important to remember to create those microclimates within enclosures. I keep my tortoises outside in what are essentially garden beds. So I have my 5 adult Burmese in what's probably an 8 by 20 foot enclosure that's like a garden bed. My fiance calls them yard koi, which is kind of a good example of like what they are. It's important to remember, like, first of all, predators. Critical to remember, like, when your tortoises are small, they can definitely become prey for different animals. Even if you have smaller tortoises, I've seen rats that have eaten off tortoise limbs before. There are certain videos out there that different tortoise keepers have put up about like having electric fences. Those are all important things if you are going to keep outside, depending on where you are. You also have to be cognizant of what you keep in the enclosures, right? So certain plants are toxic. And if you have a plant in an enclosure for tortoises, they're going to eat it. If there's a large enough tortoise to keep outside, it's going to like run over the plant. It's going to figure out a way to get the leaves down on the ground to where it's going to eat it. So you need to be very careful about that. And then, you obviously, if you're going to keep animals outside, you also want to kind of get into a deworming process, because inherently, like twice a year, you're going to want to just sort of preventatively deworm. It might not even be preventative at that point if you have wildlife, right? Like you can only stop so much in terms of like biosecurity. So that's like the biggest thing for me. Just rain, you got to make sure they have dry spots. And these are all things that I've messed up at certain points too. There are times in my life where I haven't had enough covered rain stoppers or places for them to get out of the rain. So even in Florida, you need a place where you can keep your animals with it if it gets cold. Like we've had one night where it dipped below
If
freezing.
there's a hurricane.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Florida, like if you have those Home Depot tubs, like the ugly black ones with the yellow tops, you need to have those ready to go. I'd say from about midsummer through honestly the spring, because you're going to have to use it when it's cold because it's going to get below like 60, 50. And then you're going to need to use it when there's hurricane prep. And you got to jump in a car with them. So I just keep a stack of like 15 clean ones at any given time in my yard, my shed, just if need be.
Yeah, Eddie was saying how with his Aldabras, with the tornado prep, he lured them out with a banana and then getting them in the boxes. And then 'cause at the time he sent me a video of them in the boxes, and I said something silly like, "Father, let us out," and he was like, there was so much poo, and smeared it everywhere, no doubt.
Absolutely. So you need to have, like, even if you're keeping them outside, you need to have a place where you can bring them in. That's necessary. It's everyone's dream to be able to keep their animal outside. It's great. It's truly amazing. But I do end up going to the vet more for my animals that I keep outside by far. That's the one downside. I don't know if that's a Justin problem or if that's more common, but the ones I keep outside do go to the vet more and require different maintenance, less maintenance, but still different maintenance. And I will say that like the one thing that's the most important to keep in mind is like, depending on where you live, certain species just, if you're going to keep them outside, just don't do it because it's not what they're made for. And whether you're talking about right. So like if you're talking about plants or animals, like if you don't live in a tropical climate, don't try and keep tropical plants outside and expect them to do well. Same with the tortoises. Like I can't keep certain species here because it's too humid. And so there's no reason to keep, a beautiful high white leopard tortoise here if it's just going to constantly have upper respiratory infections and other issues like that. So know where you are too. That's super important.
So what are your dream species?
On like the lizard side, for sure, blue tree monitor. I've wanted one for a while. I don't think there's really like there are very few animals that are prettier than those. When I finally do move into my own house, like I am for sure going to have a built-in blue tree monitor enclosure. I work with a lot of my dream species. The one that I think that I'm really would love to work with on the tortoise side are the spider tortoises. I think they're awesome. They're small. They have, the radiated almost kind of pattern. So that's the other species that I'm most excited to work with in the future. There are certain species where I don't want to get into that yet. I am very good at what I do with my animals, but like if I get into the spider tortoises, like I want to be even better than I am now. Like every time I add a new species, like I don't want to be stagnant with my care or my skills. Like I want to just keep getting better.
That's great that you're responsible with it. Where can people find you online?
I'm mostly on Instagram. That's kind of where I live, and things are also, I'm on Facebook as well. So Miami Tortoise Garden is my handle. I'm trying to get into TikTok. Been a little bit of an uphill battle there for me, but maybe that's my age. Maybe we'll see. We'll get there. And then YouTube will be coming soon. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great to meet you, to chat with you, to be silly with you, to laugh with you, to relate to you and admire what you do with your beautiful animals. I can't wait to see when your YouTube channel is up and keep updated with everything that you post because I love every single one of your animals.
Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate it. And I will keep you posted on all of it.
So to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Reptile Rendezvous. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share and comment. It would mean so much to me and every little bit of support is appreciated. Justin, thank you. Until next time, keep exploring and stay wild.